Hello, and welcome to the Gaming with Science podcast, where we talk about the science behind some of your favorite games.
Today is a creator interview about FloraVista by Far Out Fox Games.
All right, welcome back to Gaming with Science. Today we're doing a creator interview with the creators of FloraVista, Carey Drake and Lanny Gross from Far Out Fox Games. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, all. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Can y'all give us a bit of a background about yourselves and about Far Out Fox Games, and then we'll jump into this game about plants. Brian and I always love those, which is why we're doing this spotlight.
Absolutely.
So, Carey and I have been friends for probably 8 to 10 years now, and we connected instantly over board games. And when the pandemic started, we were both looking for a hobby or a creative outlet for our time when everyone remembers you were sort of like stuck inside and the world seemed perilous and like you couldn't do anything. So we were trying to find something to do and find something that sparked our creative passion. And Carey and I discovered that we both had a passion for making board games, and Carey showed me a poster board he had made when he was like 8 or 10 of like a board game. And Carey, remind me of the theme of that.
I've had many themes of board games.
Sure.
I think one was you're walking through a swamp, you get
Yes.
eaten by alligators,
Yep.
and you're trying to survive without losing all of your body parts.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah.
That sounds like
played
something a
through
10-year-old
that.
would make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like classic 10-year-old, there's a way that you get stuck in a loop between two spaces, and that's how your game ends, I guess. And I have been doing that as well. I have a few projects that are like in alpha and beta that are not FloraVista, and we kind of decided, what if we collaborate on something? We both were looking for a project, and so out of that, FloraVista was born. We've been working on that since about 2022. Yeah. So it's been a long time, but we're excited to be at this point, to be ready to almost take it out to Kickstarter and launch it to the public.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and by the time this episode's dropped, the Kickstarter should be live, so anyone listening can check it out if it sounds like something you'd like.
I think that, obviously playing board games is a lot of fun. Designing board games is also very fun in kind of a different way. It's satisfying. You scratch a different itch with that. You're not the first people I've heard who the inspiration for this came from COVID lockdown. And quite a number of creative projects have their origin in that period of time.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And it was a good way to engage with ourselves, engage with some friends, be able to do something creative and out of the box when it sort of seemed like you couldn't do anything else.
we talked to somebody previously who they were playing Pandemic Legacy with their board game group when the COVID, and I think they said they had to stop playing because it was...
That one has not come back into my rotation, to be totally honest, and it's just been too real,
Yeah.
And it's a great game, which is like sad because I'm like, I'm emotionally maybe in 2025 we're ready to come back to Pandemic.
All right, so we met y'all at Southern Fried Gaming Expo here in Atlanta, where you were demoing your game. And again, Brian and I both like lots of plants. And so we saw this game that was about gardening and building your garden, and that I did not have a chance to play it, but Brian did. Can you tell us just a little bit quick overview of like how the game plays? And then what was your inspiration? What made you decide to make a game about building a garden?
I mean, I can speak to some of the inspiration for FloraVista. I think when Lanny and I met during COVID, we both knew we wanted to make a board game, but we didn't really know exactly what we wanted to do. Before we'd met, I'd been playing around with a theme just around plants and figuring out, what are some like maybe cool mechanics we could do around plants and that general theme. And Lanny, he had actually already been working on an idea from his time at CNN. It was about like news articles and putting like news articles together. And it was kind of like this matching mechanic of finding like articles, reporters, themes, things like that. And we were like, okay, that sounds like a really cool mechanic that we could kind of translate into this plant theme. So we kind of like combined two different things we were working on and started kind of iterating based on that. It's funny, when we first started, like in 2022, we're like, okay, we're going to launch, 6 months from now. Like this seems pretty easy, right? And here we are, a few years later, still working on it and learning as we go. But we drew a lot of inspiration from games, with beautiful artwork like Wingspan. We have over 120 different plants, and each one has original watercolor style artwork. So like the imagery, the illustrations, that's a huge component of our game. We both saw like plants, gardening during COVID, like that became like a really just
Oh, very good point.
popular thing to do,
Yeah.
right? And we're like, you know what? I think that's something we could potentially capitalize on and a lot of people can connect with and relate to. And so
Hmm.
that's kind of how we landed on that theme for plant.
You need to work on a trio now. It can be gardening, raising backyard chickens, and baking sourdough bread, the
Oh,
trinity of
Yeah.
COVID
I
activities.
know, right? Exactly. I haven't gotten into sourdough starter yet, but my sister keeps on threatening to give me hers.
That's quite the threat.
I know. I should just roll over and accept it. Yeah, so that was a big part of our inspiration. And I personally got into more gardening over COVID. I struggle with like 90% shade garden, which has been a
Mm.
big challenge in my house of figuring out, okay, what won't die my garden? We have a lot of some really nice smaller ground cover plants, but it was really fun to kind of like relate back to, okay, this is a hobby I'm getting into, and it's fun to learn so much about the plants. And then going back to Jason's other part of the question, how does the gameplay work in FloraVista? We had always intended for it to be a relatively easy game to pick up that you could play with a family. My father, who likes board games but finds some of the rules challenging, plays and enjoys and can win at FloraVista. I think Carey's played with nieces and nephews. I've played with my sister-in-law's grandkids, and so it's very family friendly. And the game is sort of at its core a matching game. You're playing matching pairs of plant cards and region cards. So every plant has a season within which you can plant it and a matching region card. So you are playing your plant cards to grow out your own botanical garden. And you're playing your way through seasons, and the gameplay takes place over 3 years. So there are 12 rounds as you play your way through spring, summer, fall, and winter. And you'll continue to create and expand and develop your own botanical garden by playing matching pairs. And kind of the strategy component is, how do I maximize the points of my cards and grow the garden that will yield the most cultivation points?
You guys also have a different flavors of garden, right? There's a kitchen garden, and what are some of the garden types that you have?
Yeah, so those are our different region cards, and we've got 8 in the game. There is Chef's Garden, Plants of Asia, Plants of Europe, Perennial Pathway, Woodland Walk, Full Bloom Alley, Exhibition Garden. Carrie, do you remember the 8th?
Evergreen Grove.
Evergreen Grove. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of the regions relate to real characteristics of the plants. So any plant that can be planted in plants of Asia is native to or originally from Asia.
Hmm.
Anything that can be planted in Chef's Garden is an edible plant. We're not like encouraging foraging here, but like go out and grow your own basil.
Hmm.
The perennial pathway plants are real life perennial plants. So those are sort of the inspiration and the tie back into science.
A question I have is, how did you pick which plants to go in here?
Hmm.
Because, I mean, there are hundreds to thousands of plants you could have chosen. So how did you pick which ones made the cut?
Were you walking around town and just kind of looking at the cool plants, or how did you decide what not to include?
We have a massive Excel sheet somewhere in Google Drive, and we went through and probably had could be 300 plants or more. And we understand we have these mechanics and these regions, and we're like, it kind of came down to balance and like
Hmm.
what plants can we find so that we can have a well-balanced game. We can have an even number in plants of Asia, plants of Europe, etc. Lanny did most of the plant research, and so we have, a little encyclopedia of interesting facts for all sorts of plants based on that.
And now you've got fodder for your expansions, right?
Right, exactly. And there were quite a few that, like, as we got into researching, a lot of the plants that are native to Australia, for example, like, don't grow anywhere else, which I mean,
Hmm.
totally makes sense for the biome of Australia, but
Yeah.
it made it hard to find. We wanted to and have global representation of plants, but we had to be very intentional with like our plants from Australia to be like, okay, where can we fit these in so that they work within the game and still can represent plants from around the world. But it was a really interesting process of seeing sort of like, okay, there are these plants that are that grow in very specific biomes that
Hmm.
kind of don't thrive and live outside of that. It was really cool, but it sort of like ended up being very limiting to tie into the game's mechanics.
Is there a Venus flytrap card or not?
No,
No,
but
for that reason, right? It's
yes,
way
that
too
would be
regional.
yes, but what a great card that could
Yeah.
be. You've got me excited about other expansions.
The carnivorous plant garden.
Maybe carnivorous plants just in general,
Oh,
right? There's the carnivorous plant garden. There's also the poison garden.
Two expansion ideas.
I'm avoiding the poison garden.
You're avoiding the poison garden. The poison garden is so much fun.
The poison garden is so much fun until I have poison oak all over me and I'm scratching like crazy.
No foxglove then?
Maybe in the future. It's more fun when it's a card and I'm not tromping through it.
So you have custom artwork for all your cards, right? Did you work with a single illustrator or multiple illustrators?
We have two illustrators, Brandon D. Hunt and Stan Clark. They're both based here in Atlanta, and they do a really wonderful job. One actually does physical media, so actual watercolor on physical media, and then
Mm.
Stan does digital media, but they've actually done a really great job of blending those two art styles and representing those on the cards.
And they're also both Atlanta-based artists. So actually, Carey and I live in Atlanta. Brandon and Stan live in Atlanta. Our graphic designers from Atlanta. So it's been nice to work with an Atlanta-based creative team.
Nice, homegrown.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as we've had updates, it's been fun to be able to share those with our graphic designer and our illustrators as well. Because it's cool to see it on a computer, but it's so much different physically having the cards in your hand and seeing all of the hard work come to life.
One thing about the art style is it's not just watercolor art style. We kind of have taken this approach where we want to show like a disarticulated life cycle of a plant that it might go
Mm.
through. So like one of my favorite plants, the California poppy, it has like three branches and it shows you, what it looks like before it's going to bloom, as it's blooming and then once it's in full bloom. And then there's some seeds next to it as well. So you kind of get not just like the plant when it's in full season and full bloom, but the kind of that whole life cycle of that plant, which is kind of interesting to see. It's got that almanac-y type feel.
Yeah, it's like a botanical illustration.
Yeah, yeah, like a field guide.
Yeah, so we were really inspired by like Autobahn field guides and stuff like that.
Mm.
So that was like a big inspiration.
And now you mentioned that these plants, they each have certain characteristics about like where they can be planted based on if they're evergreen or from Europe or in a herb garden or something. What other mechanics are there? And like, what's the correlation between like the real world plant and the way that they encapsulate mechanics? It's like, if I look at a card and says, oh, this card has this mechanical effect, can I see that in that plant? It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense why this plant does that thing. I guess that depends on the plants doing something other than having a spot where you can put them.
I mean, at the core of the game it's a matching game, so it's like finding out in what season and what region you can plant a card. We do have cards that when you plant them, they have special abilities when played. So they're not exactly related directly to the plant. It's just kind of an extra fun mechanic that it will give you, for example, stealing a card or maybe drawing an extra card. We have some really interesting additional mechanics that come into play with our expansion pack that is going to launch at the same time as the game called Invasive Species, and that really gives you some more like plant specific things you can do. For example, with our base game you're planting cards in your own garden, but with invasive species you're going to be planting cards in other players' gardens to try to sabotage or mess them up. And then they have abilities that will, allow you to steal points or maybe make them have to skip a turn to, clean the weeds out in their garden or something like that. So they're really interesting mechanics that come up in the expansion, I think.
I'll be honest. I'm very excited about the invasives expansion. I might have to get on Kickstarter so I can get the expansion with the base game.
And the invasive is like either, yes, I'm all in on like being an invasive
Mhm.
chaos gremlin, or some people are like, oh, I'm here for like the kumbaya coziness of it all. So
Hmm.
but it's fun and nothing gets too mean. It is like slightly devious, you know? It's not like you're derailing an opponent or getting them off track. So, and sort of going back to Jason's question of like the accuracy, all of the regions of the cards are actually very accurate. And where we had to take some more liberal approaches with the mechanics are with the seasons that the plants can be played in. So
Hmm.
not a ton of plants are growing in the winter. And as you all are aware, it ended up being really hard to keep the growing season organic to real life growing seasons. So we depart a little bit from reality there, but every plant is growing where they can be growing. Every plant features a Latin name. That's their real Latin name. Their real seasons are on there. Their real plant facts on there. So I would say a majority of it is fairly organic to what the real plant does in real life.
I will say, at least down here in the South, winter gardening is a thing. But when I lived up north, it's like, nope, ground is literally frozen. So not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to plant some wheat that I'll be overwintering. So we'll see how that goes. It's going to be a pain in the butt to deal with, but I'm going to do it anyway. I've done barley before.
Yeah, what are you going to do with it?
With the wheat, I'm going to try to turn it into flour.
Ah,
Farm to table. Wow.
For the barley, that was for beer, which didn't matter as much if there was a little bit of grit in it because it was going to get filtered. But for flour, if there's some sand in it, there's going to be sand in my bread, and I don't like that. So we'll have to see.
are you going like full bathtub brew for your beer?
Not with the amount of barley I was able to grow.
Okay, yeah, more like a little container brew.
Yeah, it was like a gallon.
All right. So going back to your game, in addition to plants, I also saw you have historical botanists, like famous botanists who are
Mm.
represented in the game. And I was never, since I didn't play the game, I didn't get a good idea of what their role is in the game. Can you tell us a little bit about like how you chose which botanists are represented? Because it looked like they're from all over the world and like what their role is in the game.
I recognized George Washington Carver for sure. And then,
And maybe Carl Linnaeus.
yes, Linnaeus, of course, that makes sense. Although Linnaeus had some funny ideas about how to name plants, I think. There were some interesting systems that were proposed for plants based on how many female and male parts they had.
Going back to your question, so we have in the base game, we have 8 different botanical specialists that you can kind of embody and play as, and they give you bonuses at the end of the game based on what regions you use to plant your cards in. And so each botanist is kind of tied to a region or a region card. So George Washington Carver, for example, is Chef's Garden,
Hmm.
as he's famous for, all of his work with peanuts, developing products and things like that. So for every plant you plant in Chef's Garden, and if you have the George Washington Carver specialist card, you'll get bonuses for that at the end of the game. And so Carl Linnaeus, he's, I think he's Swedish, so he's from Plants of Europe. And then we have others, Barbara McClintock, Inez Mexia, Martin Cardenas, Agnes Arbor. These are all kind of tied in some way to the region. And that's kind of how we came up with those. But we tried to get a broad representation of botanists because, I mean, maybe it is what it is, but it's just looking throughout history. It's just a lot of just white white dudes that seem to be botanists throughout history. And so we really wanted to elevate a wide variety of botanists that
Well, Jason is a Mays geneticist, so I imagine Barbara McClintock is sort of a patron saint of that,
Oh,
yes?
yes, yes. Always happy to hear when Dr. McClintock's name is mentioned. So, another thing. So, you mentioned that you have a plant expansion about invasive plants. I also saw that you have an early backer award on Georgia natives, which I'm very happy about. I love native plants. I actually have a small native plant garden in like the one spot in my yard that actually gets sunlight. So, just curious, like, as much as you're willing to spoil, like, which plants did you pick to include in there and why?
We really wanted to focus on plants that grow really well in Georgia or are very emblematic of Georgia. And so we've got the Cherokee rose, which actually I did not realize until I was researching this. This is the Georgia's state flower
Hmm.
emblem. but is not actually native to Georgia. It grows
Oh no.
well here, but I think it's actually native to Asia, if I could recall correctly. We're also did the flowering dogwood. We're both big fans of the Piedmont Park Dogwood Festival, and the dogwood holds like a very special place to us as like kind of the start of spring and a very Atlanta, Georgia emblematic plant. And then we tried to work on including a few others that were very important and special to Georgia, some azaleas, and we also wanted to work with our VIPs, like the people that are coming in and backing them. So we did a few of them were, here's a list of important plants to Georgia. What do you guys want to see in our expansion? Because they're the ones that are going to be getting it when it launches on Kickstarter.
Well, I'll put in my vote for American Beautyberry if that's not already on the list.
It is not. Wait, tell me a little bit about American Beautyberry.
Oh, it's my favorite Georgia native. It's this big bushy thing. It can actually get pretty big, like 6 feet across or so. It's got these big leaves. The leaves have compounds that the Native Americans would use as like mosquito repellent. So you like crush it and rub it on your arms. But it's really pretty this time of year. So we're recording this in September because it forms these clusters of bright purple berries on every node of the leaf. So you have this long stem going out, and there's just a ball of purple berries, and then a gap, and then another ball of purple berries, and a gap, and another ball of purple berries, and a gap. And it just looks beautiful.
They're such a gorgeous purple too. I just looked them up, and they look very tasty. Are they edible? Are they edible and not poisonous?
They are edible. They are not poisonous. They're one of those things that people use to make jam or jellies, which you can assume probably means they're not very sweet.
Sure, a little astringent.
I've actually tried them. They basically taste like cardboard. They are not tasty berries. They are edible. You can eat them, but there's no real pleasure in doing so.
We got to start working on improving the beautyberry, right?
They are beautiful, so I see where they get their name. It has such a nice purple sheen.
One of my favorite invasives is the porcelain berry. Have you seen that before?
No.
Oh, those are also unfortunately beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely gorgeous fruit.
Yeah, it's like this beautiful, like teal, purple, metallic color. It's gorgeous, gorgeous. And then I look like, can I put this in my garden? Like, oh, it's invasive.
Well, you could put it in your garden.
Yes, but
I'm
I
going to
feel
start
bad.
an invasives garden.
It would do really well, probably.
We'll just make the invasives compete with one another to see we'll just find the most invasive among them.
Yeah, if you need suggestions for invasive, I have a long list of ones I've been trying to get rid of. Rhizomaceous bamboo,
Privet,
kudzu, Japanese bent grass.
Japanese honeysuckle.
It was sadly all too easy to find a great list of invasive species. And as Atlanta residents, kudzu is like really our star. She was our jumping off point.
It's like the poster child of invasive plants.
Especially in the South, in the southern United States. You can drive by and you're like, oh, that entire field, this entire mile of freeway is just covered in kudzu.
The plant that ate the South.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe kind of winding down, I've got a question for y'all about general game design. So you mentioned that this is the first game that you're really taking all the way through development and production, and it's been a learning curve. So for any of our listeners who maybe also be thinking of going down that path, like what are the major lessons you learned, maybe like top 2 or 3 things to pass on to future people to help them along their path, or at least maybe spare them a little bit of pain?
It's a really good question. And I mean, my first recommendation, if you are at the beginning of the path, is just to put pen to paper or like whatever that means for your game. Stick things on dice, use pips to make your resources, because it is not going to come out of you perfect. And before I started making games, I was like, oh, I need to come up with the full concept before I really start. And that is not true. You want to get something out and start playing around with it, because the game is going to evolve. I mean, our game, FloraVista, has evolved so much since we started. One of our original concepts was the amount of sun a plant can get was going to be some sort of factor or resource or something. And ultimately, as we started playtesting it with ourselves and playtesting it with our friends, you learn, okay, this is really fun. This is really important. This mechanic's not really working. This thing is a rule for one card, but it's not a rule for every other card. Just drop it. There's just so much that you learn just by like taking the next step and putting it down. And then my other suggestion, which is not to dissuade anyone in any way, shape, or form, is that it takes a while. It sort of takes a while to really go from like concept to the end of the finish line. And Carey alluded to this. When we started, we were like, this will be a project that we finish in a year. And we're here 3 years later. And there are points where I'm like, oh, it would have been great if we could have done 6 months, but that's just like not even possible in any way, shape, or form. You know, you've got to do alpha prototyping, you've got to do beta prototyping. You want to get your actual prototype from the manufacturer that you're going to work with, because man, that was such a unique experience, because there were things that looked great on the computer that when we got it in, we were like, oh, this just does not translate when we print. And so you want to really see it physically in front of you, and then we get to play with people like Brian and show it off to people and get people interested and excited. So again, it is not to dissuade people in any way, but it is a longer process than you might think.
A marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. And sort of when you can reframe that, it sort of makes everything better. Because at the beginning, I was like, oh, we blew through our 1 year goal right here. And at that point, we were on like hand printed stuff that all had the same plant image that really confused everyone. Everyone was like, wait, not everything is an orchid. And we're like, no, that's just a placeholder. We just have not figured out everything at this point. And so actually our first prototype was on the back of index cards. So it's really evolved, and you've just sort of got to stay the course. And I think the last thing that I'm going to say is have friends that are willing to do it. And my sweet husband has played this game probably, aside from Carey and I, more than any other person on this planet. And he is so sweet to like keep on working through things. And, you know, one of the challenges we gave him at the beginning that he loved was like, how could you break this game? Like, help us figure out the ways in which, like, you know, you create a game to be balanced and replayable, but like, are there things we have not thought of that just totally break all of the core mechanics of the game? And that was a really great lesson too on like, okay, what actually doesn't work here and needs to be streamlined and improved.
Jason and his wife were my kind playtesters, and Jason is an expert in breaking games. That's his specialty.
Thank you, Jason. We need you guys. You guys are as important as we are, because if you just create a game in a silo that no one's played, it needs to be played. It needs to be played so that it's smart and it's good and it's replayable.
You need your bug testers, basically, right?
Yeah.
Your people who are really putting it through its paces and trying to find those weird edge cases.
Yeah, and we've heard from multiple creators that by the time your game is done, all of your friends and family should be absolutely sick of it and never want to play it again.
They probably are. I think one funny thing is you don't necessarily think about is the rule book.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, Lanny and I have played so many times. We know how to play the game, and then we start to write down the rules, and we're like,
English sucks. That's the problem.
it's like, oh, well, we know how to play this game really well, but how do I put this in writing so someone else understands? And that's a very different challenge that you run into. And then you also realize, oh, what actually are our rules? Like, we change them up so often. It's kind of like, which ones do we actually want to go with? It forces you to make tough decisions about your game, you know?
Yeah.
And that's when you rely on your play testers too, because we ran into this a couple times. Like, you start designing the game for yourself, which is a fun thing to do. But Lanny and I, you know, we tend to like more medium, like heavy games. And FloraVista was never meant to be like a really heavy strategy game that takes, you know, hours to play. And so we're like, oh, you know what? We need to think about our audience, maybe, you know, cut back the difficulty level a little bit, do some more play testing, see what works, and go from there. And, you know, look at other games for inspiration, honestly. Like, how do other games design their rule book? How do they handle the artwork? How do they do their marketing and promotion? Like, designing games, that's the fun part. Lanny and I had a great time, I think, doing that. You know, starting out on business cards, iterating. I remember our Excel sheet, I was working in Photoshop, and I'm like, I created this macro that would automatically like generate 300 cards for us, and we could easily print them out and make changes based on that.
Oh, wow.
But then you realize, okay, well, now we have to figure out how to produce this game, and then we have to figure out how to market this game. Other things we didn't think about like, you know, we need a trademark for this game.
There are a lot of different hats you get to wear.
Yeah,
You get to learn what you like and maybe what's a challenge for you, but it's been really cool. I didn't know much about marketing before this game, and it's been a very interesting hat to wear.
I've got one more question I was hoping to ask. Jason, did you have one more as well?
I have one more, but mine's fast. So you go first.
All right, this is something I want to start doing when we get people on. I'm taking inspiration from another podcast I listen to called Monster Talk. What are some of your favorite games with a science or nature theme? Do you have one?
I love Wingspan. I love the bird theme in that. I'm one of those people that reads every single bird fact that's on there, and I love the map that's on there. And we really wanted to put a map on our cards too of
Oh,
where it grows. And this was one of the things that we really learned while we were putting everything together. It's like too much information suddenly makes the card like too cluttered and you can't pick out the information you really need. Pandemic is up there.
two of our highest scoring games from the podcast. So we agree with you on both of these.
I like Habitat.
Oh, I'm gonna write that one down. Don't know that one.
I'm not thinking of the right game. I'm so sorry. I'm thinking of Harmonies was what I was thinking
Oh,
of.
yes, literally my favorite game of last year.
Oh, fantastic. I really like Arc Nova. That's like an animal zoo, and I love a zoo, honestly. So,
Who doesn't love a zoo?
yeah, or an aquarium. Oh, gosh. Our aquarium in Atlanta, love that aquarium.
World class, world class.
Yes, if you're ever in Atlanta and you can only visit one thing, do not go to the Coke Museum, go to the aquarium. It's much better.
100%. And you've got to get here before
All the school groups.
all the school groups and before our last whale shark goes. We will not get any
Oh,
more whale sharks at the Atlanta Aquarium, which is for conservation reasons. But the whale sharks are gorgeous, gorgeous, majestic creatures. And sadly, one of them just passed in the last few months.
Yeah, I heard that. Just old age, basically.
Yeah.
what about you, Carrie?
I think all the games Lanny mentioned, Wingspan for sure. I'm thinking Photosynthesis is a fun
Yep.
game.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that a lot of these games we've done before. So like we're not missing big parts of the area.
No, and there's a national park style game called Trekking that I like to play. Lanny had a pretty good list. Those are the only two I would add, I think.
All right. And then my question is the mirror of that. What's your favorite plant, either in your game or just in general?
I'll go with in the game. My favorite plant's the California poppy that I mentioned earlier. And you can kind of see what some of our favorite plants are in the game based on how many points they're worth. So that's a 5 point card. That's the highest scoring plant in the game. And I think it's just really interesting. It can be, it's technically edible. Indigenous people used to use it as kind of like a pain reliever or like a mild sedative, which I think is interesting. It kind of reminds me of the Wizard of Oz thing where Dorothy kind of falls asleep, even though that's not technically a California poppy,
That's an Oz poppy.
a magical poppy.
I always thought they were opium poppies, but
In Oz, maybe, probably. Oz is a weird place.
Yeah.
But I think it's just a beautiful plant overall. I love orange, and I think poppies do this thing where they'll close their petals at night, and it prevents kind of like predators or pests from bothering it, and it kind of preserves energy, and that's a cool little feature that a plant has.
In the game, and maybe also in real life, we have a royal fern card. I love ferns. I
Mm.
think they are so cool and unique, and their like history on the earth is so unique. You guys probably know more than I do about the classification of ferns, but they sort of function so different from a lot of other plants. I find that so interesting and that it's been around since like prehistoric eras, like, is just so cool to me. And then within the game, one of our cards is the royal fern, and I probably researched about 3 to 5 plant facts about every single plant in this game, and I found this one and was instantly like, this is absolutely going in the game. In Slavic mythology, if you held royal fern spore clusters, you were said to be able to slay demons and talk to plants. And
Whoa.
yeah, I know. And I'm like, cool, I'm going out to get some royal fern clusters immediately.
Yeah, you got all those demons to slay.
Right, exactly. I can live out my Buffy fantasy. I can be a real life druid. It's like perfect. And I'm like a huge fantasy mythology person, so that one just like really spoke to me on a core level.
Yeah, that sounds very D&D. We got to pull that into a campaign.
I know, right? Exactly.
All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you both for coming on. If people want to look more into Far Out Fox Games or FloraVista, where should they go?
You can Google FloraVista or go to floravista.faroutfox.com and you can sign up for updates.
Yep, and we are looking forward to our audience finding the game and backing us on Kickstarter and getting the game in real life. It's going to be a lot of fun, and thank you both for this interview. Thank you, Brian, for playing with us already.
Absolutely.
Well, we're going to call it there. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a great month and happy games.
And have fun playing dice with the universe. See ya.
This has been the Gaming with Science podcast, copyright 2025. Listeners are free to reuse this recording for any non-commercial purpose as long as credit is given to Gaming with Science. This podcast is produced with support from the University of Georgia. All opinions are those of the hosts and do not imply endorsement by the sponsors. If you wish to purchase any of the games we talked about, we encourage you to do so through your friendly local game store. Thank you and have fun playing dice with the universe.